Hi, I'm Ashton, and today I'm wearing kind of ridiculous, overdramatic makeup, and I'm going to talk about books. Today I want to give you my trans book recommendations. These are books that I like. I do complain about books a lot. One video of mine that's been getting a weirdly large amount of views recently complaining about Stay Gold. So people enjoy it when I rant about books I dislike, but today I want to tell you about books that I actually like and recommend. And this is not a full and complete list. There are more, but you gotta limit it at some point or I'd be talking forever. And there are, of course, more books that I'm planning to read in the future, and maybe in like a year, I'll do another one of these videos because I'm probably gonna read 100 books next year, considering I've read like 90 whatever this year. And it's not even the end of December yet. But for now, these are some of the trans books that I very highly recommend. So I have 12 books to recommend as well as a few honorable mentions. I actually only own 4, so I'm going to scoot over, I suppose, this way and pop up the covers of ones that I don't own. I read a lot of library books, so I don't have a lot physically. So I have this broken down into 3 sections. I'm starting with fiction, then we're going to do nonfiction, then I have 3 anthologies to talk about. For each book, I'm going to give you publication year because I think that's sometimes important for the context, age range for the book, and genre. Is it own voices, and what type of own voices is it? The star rating that I gave it, any specifics or comments I have on it, and if it is available free somewhere, I will let you know because a few of these are. I will also let you know if I have a trans book review of a specific book because while the negative trans book reviews I do tend to get more views, I do talk about ones that I like as well. So if I have a review on a book, I'll probably talk about it a bit less and just link the review in the description so you can hear my full thoughts. All of that said, let's start with I Wish You All the Best by Mason Deaver, which is actually a book that I own. I have this in hardback because I was so excited for it to come out, and I was like, wow, Own Voices Non-Binary book by someone who lives in the same town as me? Absolutely, I will be reading it. So I read it and I really liked it. This came out in 2019. I did do a trans book review of it, which will be the first link down below because I'm going to do them in order. This is like a YA romance coming of age story, and it's Own Voices Non-Binary, which is great. I gave it 5 stars. I read it, over a year ago, so I don't remember all too much of it considering I've read 90 whatever books since then, but it's good. I would recommend it to most people, and I have a full video on it if you would like to know more that features a dog, so go watch that if you want. The next book I want to talk about is another one that I have a trans book review on, and that would be Felix Ever After by Kacen Callender. I have so much love in my heart for this book. The cover is beautiful. The story is so found family. I love a found family story. Felix came out this year in 2020. It's a YA coming-of-age romance. It's about a Black non-binary trans art student as he discovers his own identity and figures out who his real friends are and, goes through all of those high school things that make up a good YA book. It's got a lot of really great themes of identity and found family, and it's lovely. It's a great book. I would recommend it for sure. I gave it 5 stars, but I don't want to talk too long about it because I have already talked about it at length on this channel. So Felix Ever After by Kacen Callender, Own Voices, Black non-binary trans book, YA coming of age. You might like it if that sounds up your alley. Next is a little bit of a 180, but Stone Butch Blues by Leslie Feinberg. It came out in 1993, and it is not really a YA book. This is an adult historical fiction, somewhat autobiographical novel. Now, some of you might be like, Ashton, this is a lesbian novel. This is not a transgender novel. You would be wrong. You should read it. It's in Own Voices, like butch lesbian / trans / revolutionary communist, which, perfect for me, right up my alley. I gave it 5 stars. I did read this for book club recently-ish, a couple months ago. I wish this was required reading for every queer person. Perhaps not everyone, because there are for sure a couple trigger warnings, and it's not easy to read, but it's so good. It's so good. It follows a butch lesbian as she, transitions and meets other butches and meets femmes and has different relationships and takes on different jobs and joins different unions, and it's a big, long story, and it spans years and years, but it's incredible. It gives you a lot of historical context of what lesbian bars and lesbian communities were like in the 50s to the 60s to the 70s. It's not an actual, autobiography, but there are for sure elements of Leslie Feinberg's life in there. It definitely encompasses a lot of different identities, and it's so impactful, and it's so heavy, and it's so important to queer history as a whole, especially in the United States. States. There's an incredible page on Here website that talks about why he wanted it to be free, and I would recommend reading that. I'll put the link down below, and that page also has a link to the full PDF of the book, which you can read for free. And Fienberg's works is just really essential to radical queer history in general. I'm going to talk a bit more about them a bit later, but for now, let's move on to the next book, which is Cemetery Boys by Aiden Thomas, another wonderful cover. This is another 2020 release that I read this year. It is a YA paranormal fantasy romance? Is that a genre? It is now. Wow, I love Cemetery Boys. I love this book so much. It's so fun. I read it through the library, so I don't have a copy, but it is wonderful. It's such a good time. It warmed my heart. It has an amazing found family element. The romance is just so fun and unique, and all of the characters are really great, and the conflict is so multifaceted. It is Own Voices Trans and Latinx. The premise of the book is based on Brujos. I don't want to get into it because I don't want to spoil anything, but there's witchcraft, there's ghosts, there's blood magic, there's a vegan, there's magical weapons. I love magical weapons. The imagery and the writing of this book is just really wonderful. Its Own Voices. I really couldn't have asked for much more. I gave it 5 stars. My only complaint was, for me, the ending was a little bit too perfect. I like a bit more nuance in endings of books, but you know, it's YA. What did I expect? Other than that, it's beautiful and wonderful, and I would highly recommend it, especially if you were looking for Own Voices QTPOC content, because that's what that is. Cemetery Boys is so fun, and I've recommended it to so many people. Obviously, similarly to Felix Ever After and to I Wish You All the Best, it's not for free anywhere online because it is a super recent release. I read Cemetery Boys and Felix Ever After through Libby, which is a library app that I recommend all the time. Not sponsored, but Libby, sponsor me, because I use Libby 24/7. Whether or not you can access any of these books through Libby depends on where you live and what library system you have a card in, but you know, give it a shot because Cemetery Boys is worth a shot. But yeah, paranormal fantasy romance, go for it, enjoy. My last actual fiction recommendation is a book that I finished today, Nevada by Imogen Binnie. This is a 2013 adult coming-of-age buildings Roman character study. I have a lot of thoughts about it. I gave it 4 stars. I did really enjoy it. It is very much, like I kind of mentioned, a character study, right? There's not a lot of plot, but the characters are so real. They're so fleshed out and personable, and even though they're not always good people, you can't help but love them and feel like you're in their communities. You know, there's a lot of heavy topics. It is an adult book, so there's heavy drugs, there's kinky sex, there's a lot of discussion about kink actually, and listen, it's good. And it intertwines in different ways with trans identities. The main character is a trans woman. It was written by a trans woman, so it is in voices. The main character is also a lesbian, and then there's another lesbian, and there's also a genderqueer trans guy who I somewhat relate to because me too. If you're a super plot-driven person, this probably won't be your favorite, but read the synopsis, and if it sounds interesting, try it out because it's a good time. It's one of those books where simultaneously nothing happens and so much happens all at once, and you really get to know this one character in depth, and she just has so many thoughts about gender, and it's all so fascinating as a fellow trans person who, you know, I've talked about this before, but one of the reasons that I love reading Own Voices trans books is because I oftentimes share so many things with different characters, but also have so many different experiences. And just reading about other trans people as a trans person can be so validating and inspiring. My only hesitation about Nevada is just that I don't think cis people should read it. I've talked a lot before about, like, there are really 2 genres of trans books. There are trans books written for cis people and trans books written for trans people. I tend to prefer them when they're written for trans people because, you know, basic over-explaining of trans identities that often exist within trans books for cis people really just doesn't appeal to me. This book is the complete other end of the spectrum. I think if you're cis, you shouldn't read this. There are just so many things that I feel like a cis person, if they've got any misinformation nuggets in their brain about trans people, this book would pick up on it. There's just a lot of complex thoughts and discussions about gender that cis people can have, sure, but you gotta be real knowledgeable about trans stuff before you get into this book. Otherwise, a lot of things are gonna fly over your head, I think. And again, it's an adult book. It literally starts on a kinky sex scene. So Nevada is good, but it is not for everyone. However, it is for everyone because it's online as a free EPUB. I love communist authors. I'll link the author's Twitter profile down below because she has the link to Nevada in her pinned tweet and in her bio. But yeah, I gave Nevada 4 stars, maybe like 4.5. I really enjoyed it. A lot of the discussions within the book really spoke to me, but it is for sure not a book for everyone. Before I move on to nonfiction, I have 3 honorable mentions. These are all books that I've read relatively recently and just really, really loved, and they're fiction, but they include a trans person, just like casually and represented in a way that it's nice, you know? You know when you're trans and you read a book and you're not expecting a trans character to be in there, but then you're like, wow, it's me. That's how I felt. That's how these books made me feel, and I enjoyed that, so I'm gonna talk about them. First honorable mention is The Vanishing Half by Brit Bennett. It's a 2020 release. It is an adult historical fiction, literary fiction novel. A lot of people talk about The Vanishing Half all over BookTube, and I'm sure you can find many videos on it, but it is great. I gave it 4.5 stars, despite me not being the biggest historical fiction fan. I really enjoyed it. And it's an honorable mention because I was not expecting a trans character. I had no idea there'd be a trans character, but there was a relatively prominent trans character. And despite this being set in like the 1900s, he was done well. He was presented well. I liked him as a character, and I enjoyed the book as a whole. So that is one of my honorable mentions. The next one is The Deep by Rivers Solomon. The Deep is a 2019 adult speculative fantasy novella, also literary fiction. It is Own Voices Black Non-Binary. This was written by a Black non-binary author, and I didn't know that until finishing the book. And then I read like about the author section, and I was like, everything makes sense now. The Deep is a beautiful novella. It's one of my favorite books I've read this year. It is on my all-time favorites fiction list. I truly, I don't know what to say about it because it's just so beautiful, and especially as a white person, there's really no words that I have for it, but it deals with generational trauma and racism through a society of mer people. If you like mer people, if you like high fantasy with complex societies that are built, it's written so beautifully, and it explores so many complex topics, and it's really just a book that you sit down with and it sinks into you and you feel every word, you know? The Society of Mer People treats gender and sexuality pretty differently than like humans do, which makes sense because colonialism changed the way that we view gender, and this society is like removed from the world of colonialism, and listen, I don't want to say too much, but the main character of this novel interacts with a human, and they have like these conversations about gender that are just really interesting because it builds upon the society that you're learning about through this novella, and it also offers somewhat of a critique of human sexuality and human gender, which is my last honorable fiction mention. Is a book that I cannot stop talking about and cannot stop thinking about. I finished it today, and I've been thinking about it nonstop since I started reading it, and that is Legendborn by Tracy Deonn. I gave this 5 stars. It is a YA sci-fi fantasy romance coming of age. All of those can be the same book. It came out in 2020. It's relatively long. I think it's like 500-ish pages, but it is incredible. Oh my god, it's so good. I love Legendborn so much. It's one of my favorite books I've read this year. The reason I'm including it on this list of trans books is because there is generally a lot of diversity in this book. The main character is a Black woman. Her roommate slash best friend for a long time is a Asian Willowa. There's also an MLM character, an MLM relationship, and then another Willowa relationship as like a couple side characters. And there is also a non-binary character who is just casually there. And that was so refreshing to me. This book means a lot to me. There were a lot of things about this book that I loved. It's set at the school that I go to. It's set at UNC Chapel Hill, so that added an extra layer for me. And then just the way the non-binary character is dealt with, like their pronouns are not questioned, and the people that are bigoted against them are also like I don't want to give anything away, again, but read Legendborn. It's so good. I know I just recommended 3 fictional novels that are centered around Black people and Black culture instead of trans stuff, but they all include trans and or non-binary characters, so they are my honorable mentions, and I love them. Let's get back to talking about trans stuff, and I will talk to you about my nonfiction recs. Now, you do see behind me quite a few trans memoirs that I'm not going to bring up, either because I haven't read them in years, such as this one. I do have a video on this one. Genuinely don't remember what I said about it. You can look through my trans book review series playlist if you want to know what I thought about some of those memoirs, but a lot of them I read a long time ago, and memoirs just don't stick in my brain as well as some other books do, so these are the books that stuck in my brain that are nonfiction and my trans book recs. Okay, first we have something that I actually read for school, which is Seeing Gender, an illustrated guide to identity and expression by Iris Gottlieb. This is a 2019 graphic nonfiction education book. It's relatively short and easy to read, and its own voice is non-binary. I didn't rate it because I read it for school, and I didn't feel like I was the audience for it because I personally didn't learn anything. However, I think it is a really good 101. And if you are new to trans communities, if you are just figuring out that you're trans, if you knew you were trans and are just figuring out you're maybe non-binary, if you know someone who is trying to wrap their head around non-binariness, this is a good book to get them. I really enjoyed it. The illustrations are beautiful, and while I didn't learn much, I thought it was well done, and I didn't notice anything problematic necessarily. So it's pretty wide-reaching and basic, and it covers a lot about non-binary identities and expression and all the things that go into that. You get a little bit of history, you get a little bit of definitions, you get some discussions about some famous non-binary people. Like, there's a lot in there, and it's pretty varied, and it is for sure a good base point. It's a good starting point. Don't let it be your end-all be-all, but I think it's a good beginning. My next nonfiction recommendation is the second book on this list that I actually own, which is Yes, You Are Trans Enough, My Transition from Self-Loathing to Self-Loathing to Self-Love by Mia Violet. I have a whole trans book review on this, so I'm not going to talk about it a lot, but I love this book as far as I remember. I read it like a year ago. I'll link my review down below once again. This is a 2018 novel that is a mix between like a memoir, autobio, and kind of an advice book sometimes. That was my favorite thing about it, really. A lot of autobio memoirs by trans people are very, like, not one-dimensional, but it's a one-lane road, you know? They don't talk about intersecting ideas, and they don't really give you explicit lessons oftentimes. It's oftentimes just, I went on T, I got top surgery, I am happy now, you know? And not that that's bad. There are for sure memoirs like that that are good, but this isn't like that. First of all, she doesn't go on T or get top surgery because she's a trans woman. But anyways, this book has, I think, some really important lessons about trans communities, and it is one that both cis and trans people can learn from. Its own voices, obviously, because it's a memoir, but I really like this. I have a whole book review on it, so I'm gonna stop talking about it, but 2018 memoir autobio by a bi trans woman, and I gave it 5 stars. Next is the other Leslie Feinberg book that I want to talk about, which is Trans Liberation Beyond Pink or Blue by Leslie Feinberg. This is a 1998 release, and it's a collection of speeches and I think a couple essays by Leslie Feinberg that they gave throughout the course of their activism. Unfortunately, this book is not free. There's a lot that went into making Stone Butch Blues free, which is why I would recommend you read that link that I talked about earlier. But it's still really good. I read this through the library, and someday I will own a copy because it's simply incredible. I give it 4.5 stars. I think this is a really historically important piece. Leslie was the first person to coin the idea of trans liberation, the title of this book, as like a Marxist concept that incorporates queer liberation and class struggle. Again, Leslie Feinberg is such an inspiration to me, and I think their work is really important in the history of radical queer politics, especially in the United States. And if you like Stone Butch Blues and haven't read any other things by Leslie Feinberg, I would recommend this for sure. If you're interested in radical queer history or lesbian history or trans history, this is for sure an important one. However, similarly to Stone Butch Blues, similarly to Nevada, this is not necessarily a book for cis people. I would say this is like the opposite of Iris Gottlieb's Seeing Gender. Like, it's not 101. You, I think, should have a pretty good grasp of what transness and what gender is before you go into this. It makes a lot more sense if you know a bit about the historical context and the people that Leslie's speaking to. And someday I will own a copy. I look forward to the day where I own a copy of this book because I could read and reread it forever. I've only read it once, and it was last year, I think, in 2019. Okay, last nonfiction recommendation is Amateur, A True Story About What Makes a Man by Thomas Page McBee. This is a 2018 release, and it is a memoir and also kind of a gender studies related book. It's definitely interesting, and it's unique in terms of memoirs because of its integration with gender studies and ideas of masculinity. I gave it 4 stars. It was not my favorite, but I do think it's well done, and I think it definitely presents interesting ideas, especially, again, to younger trans people. And I'm kind of flip-flopping here, so Trans Liberation, that's for my fellow radical queers. Amateur is for people that just figured out that they're trans and or cis people. This is a book that I enjoyed. I didn't think it was bad. I just know that it's not for me. I have a minor in sexuality studies, and by virtue of being trans and out for 7 years, and being involved in trans communities and online spaces and everything, like, I feel like I didn't take away that much from this book, but it's for sure an interesting perspective. Thomas Page McBee is a journalist, and he's also the first trans man to have boxed in Madison Square Arena. I think that's what it's called. And this is kind of the journey of him getting there and training to get there and what he learned about masculinity along the way. So perhaps this would be more interesting to super sporty people. My friend Sam Levi actually has a whole book review on this where he talks about it for, I think, like 10 or so minutes. If you like my book-related videos, you will probably like his. Finally, I have 3 anthologies to recommend, 2 of which I own. The first one is X Marks the Spot, a non-binary anthology edited by Theo Hendry. This is one I've talked about many, many times. I do have a trans book review on it. This has essays and little bits of memoir and poems and some art, and just a lot of the things in it are really wonderful. Anthologies are kind of by nature difficult to review because, especially in this one, there's such a breadth of experiences. But if you're non-binary and want some things that are going to speak to you, I think this is a really great option. Or if you're trans and you want to know a bit more about different non-binary people and identities and experiences, again, I think this is a good option. This is a 2019 anthology with poetry, short memoirs, and stories. It is all in voices. It is all by non-binary people. I suppose a disclaimer to go along with this one is that Theo Hendry and I are like mutuals on a couple platforms, and we don't like know each other, but we're mutuals, so I guess disclaimer, but that didn't really impact the way that I read the book, and I would recommend it regardless. Anthologies are kind of hit or miss by nature, but you can't really do anything about that unless you want it to not be an anthology, you know? So inevitably there's going to be some that you like and some that you don't like, but as a whole, I think anthologies are generally a good way of looking at queer experiences because they are so varied and, you know, cover so many different identities and spectrums. Next book I want to talk about, I read through the library, so I don't own it, but I would like to, and it's called Against Equality, Queer Revolution, Not Mere Inclusion, and it's edited by Ryan Conrad. This is for sure a more hit or miss anthology, especially because it's political. A lot of the essays or conversations didn't speak to me as much as other ones do, but I do think it is a good, not necessarily introduction, but it's a good like discussion bit on a few different aspects of queer radicalism. This is an anthology that kind of covers 3 anthologies that came before it from Against Equality, which Against Equality is like a radical queer organization. They began in 2009 and they describe themselves as giving like queer challenges to the politics of inclusion, which I am very into. You can't find the entire anthology online, I don't think, but the majority of the essays within it are available on their website, which I will link below. So Revolution Not Inclusion takes together 3 previously published Against Equality books, which are Queer Critiques of Gay Marriage, Don't Ask to Fight Their Wars, and Prisons Will Not Protect You. And this just takes all the essays that were in those books and puts them together into one. I definitely think it's worth the read, again, especially if you're a fan of radical queer politics, but again, it's definitely not for everyone. If you don't have a basic understanding of prison abolition arguments and anti-gay marriage arguments, it might not be as up your alley. I don't think it's as 101 as some other resources on radical queer politics are, but I enjoyed it. I made the book club and read it. I didn't make them read it. People read it willingly, but a lot of us enjoyed it, and it brought some good discussions and, you know, taught some people things that they hadn't thought about before, which I thought was pretty cool. Against Equality is something that I've recommended many a time, and now I am recommending it to you. And finally, the last book that I would love to introduce you to today is something that I have, again, talked about a lot, and you may have heard me talk about before. Nepalta, an anthology edited by Christopher Soto, and it is an anthology, as you can see, of queer poets of color. This is one of my favorite books I own. I scroll through it. I flip through it and select a random poem whenever I'm feeling down, because so many of them are just really empowering and powerful and uplifting, or just heavy critiques, and they're I don't think there's a single poem in here that I have not loved. There are poems in here from people you've probably heard of, like Audre Lorde and Langston Hughes, but there's also a variety of poets that I'd never heard of, but I really, really loved. All the poetry in here, I gave it 5 stars, and once again, I got too passionate and forgot about the things that I was going to say for every book. So, this was published in 2018. It is a Poetry Own Voices QTPOC collection, as you probably know by now. One of my favorites in here that I come back to time and time again is Litanies to My Heavenly Brown Body by Marka Guhar. Mwah. Chef's kiss, it's beautiful. Every poem in here is so wonderful. If you like poetry, you'll love this. Another one in here that I really like that kind of combines like genuine queer social critique with just like humorous content about ass eating is called Lick My Butt by Justin Shin. It's good. I would recommend it. Just every poem, like, read this, okay? Buy it, read it. It's wonderful. Again, since this is a more recent one, I don't think it exists online, but it is absolutely worth having a copy, and I am so glad I do. I am not the biggest poetry person. I really am not. But stuff like this is so heavy and heart-wrenching, but also heartwarming sometimes, and just, you go through every human emotion reading this. And I know this one's not explicitly trans, but a lot of the stuff in here is about being trans, and or genderqueer, and or gender nonconforming, and or non-binary. So, you know, it's adjacent and it is related enough and I love it enough to talk about it. So yeah, that is all of my recommendations. I hope that at least one or two of these was new to you. If you've read all of them or if you have more recommendations, let me know. I have a list of hundreds of books to read on Goodreads. If you've read any of these and want to talk to me about them, please do in the comments because I want to talk about them because I really like them all and that's why they're on this list. And now you can stop telling me that I only complain about books, because I don't. Because I made a whole video ranting about books that I just love. This is probably like half an hour long. I'm so sorry. I'm not sorry. You're welcome. I hope that you can read a few of these. Check out the links below for those sweet, sweet free online copies of some of these because I love communists. But yeah, I would love to know if you've read any of these or what your favorite trans books are, especially nonfiction and radical queer politics related ones because that's my shit. Goodbye, comrades. I hope that you find a book that you feel really close to and really tugs on your heartstrings because that is one of the best feelings in the world. And I'll talk to you later, maybe.